Welcome to another episode of the Antifragility Reframe podcast, where struggles become strength and stress fuels growth. Today, our guest is Miss Deborah Laurel. She is a workplace learning and performance strategist. In fact, she has more than 1,100 learning tips on the Laurel system. Ms. Laurel, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Douglas.
I am very much intrigued in the fact that you not only focus on learning, but you focus on performance. And you are very much concerned that within the workplace, employees are treated fairly and are able to really achieve their potential as leaders, learn how to stimulate that performance by equitable treatment, etc. One of the things which we like to do is to have our guests tell us something about their journey. What led them to the passion that they presently have, and to give us some anecdotes as to how they use that passion to help others. So could you tell us something about your journey?
Well, my focus on training managers started because I had a toxic manager. I was asked to audit a manager, and there were allegations that he was abusing employees. I interviewed him, his employees, I observed. I also looked at written documentation. As a result of my report, that manager was demoted 2 pay ranges, and my reward was to be placed under his supervision. And the stress made me lose the use of my left arm. I was in terrible pain, and I just swore that I would get out of there before I had to report to him, because I obviously had been betrayed by upper management. And I did get out of there. And I have focused on training managers so that they will be empathetic, so that they will create a positive and supportive work environment, so that no other employee has to suffer the way that I suffered.
You know, one of the things that is really actually not appreciated is well-being and the physical harm that can come to individuals when in a toxic culture, a toxic management situation. And that is usually not appreciated. Tell me, was there a change in your thinking, a change in your perspective that gave you the courage to step out of that toxic situation? You know, so often we are trapped in those situations until something, you know, physically bad happens to us.
I had already gotten out of a toxic, abusive personal situation, so I knew it was possible.
Mhm. How did you view the solution of upper manager? They demoted him, but then they punished you by having you report to him. How did you view that?
Well, I viewed that, first of all, as a terrible betrayal of me. They used me as a tool and then threw me away. Uh, I didn't think that he should continue to be a manager. I thought that that decision was highly inappropriate. So I wasn't in support of anything that they had decided, and certainly not in support of how they treated me.
Given that experience, and which led you into coaching and consulting with managers so that they would become better and create better environments and cultures, um, could you share with us, without revealing confidences, of course, any other situations in which you were able to improve the environment for employees by helping managers to manage better?
Well, I'll begin with when I was an EEOC counselor trainer, and I had identified a prima facie case of discrimination. This dealt with building superintendents and that they were not promoting women into lead positions. And they were ordered to attend training by me. And I went in there with the assumption they were being naughty. They knew they were being naughty, and we needed to talk about it from that perspective. But what became clear and what happened was I was in a room with 40 superintendents of grounds, any of whom could have been very happily burying me on some capital ground somewhere. And the only place to get out of the room was behind them. So I was trapped. And one man stood up and he started coming up very angry. And so I said, well, what's your side of it then? And he said, I've been trained to protect women. I don't want my wife, my children, daughters up on the Capitol when it's icy trying to remove snow. That's too dangerous. And I said, okay, that's a social expectation. Now, if your daughter came to you and said, I'm not being allowed to be able to be promoted just because I'm a woman, what would you say? And he said, well, that wouldn't be acceptable. That's not fair. I said, and so it's not fair what you're doing. These are adult women. It's their choice. You take safety precautions with the men, you will take safety precautions with the women. And we had a good open dialogue about their social behavior and that it didn't necessarily apply in the work environment. And as a result of that training, those superintendents sent their managers to be trained. And those women were promoted.
You know, one of the things we talk about is we think of the elements of anti-fragility reframing, of how you find different ways of doing things so that those solutions make you stronger, better, make you anti-fragile. One of the things we talk about, one of the elements, is expanding access to ideas, access to people, access to mentors, etc. And in your coaching and consulting, do you find that helpful? Because this situation, which you just mentioned to me, was an excellent example of expanding their access to an idea. And the way you framed it, he got it. Uh, so he was able to shift his perspective and come up with a solution that was not only important for women, but was also important for him as a superintendent.
Well, I agree that that's important. This is not the first time that I have done that. When I was in my early career, I was in a typing pool because we used to have typing pools for those of you listening who don't know what I'm talking about. And
That's where we give away our age. I know
typewriter
about typing tools.
before computers. And it was a very misogynistic environment where all the women, despite their degrees, and I had my master's degree, were typists, and the professionals were all white males. We wouldn't discuss racial equality or anything like that there. And they would literally physically knock you out of the way If you were working at something, say at the copy machine, they would knock you out of the way. So I started gathering the other typists at noon to talk about being assertive. That because what would also happen is we would be given all of these deadlines, these last minute deadlines, because the professional men were procrastinating. And then we suffered having to work overtime to get something done that they could have done days or weeks earlier. So I taught the women how to be assertive. And so we started talking back. We started saying, these are the systems that we're going to have in place. If you expect to have something by this date, this is when we need to have it. And the men weren't very happy, but they complied. And as a result of that work is what got me into the Equal Employment Opportunity Counselor Trainer position because of my work with assertiveness.
Well, as you sat in EEOC, what are some of the things? This was an example which got you to be involved in EEOC, but what are some of the other things that you saw as problems that occurred, frequently?
I created a task force and I pulled in representatives from the large, medium, and small agencies, from the union reps, from legislative aides, so that I had the full spectrum of possibility of perspective on the issue. Now, one of the problems was that one of the managers in the central department responsible for statewide personnel had a running grudge with the HR manager of the largest university. I said, okay, bottom line, what is it that HR is intending to accomplish? And very quickly, they identified, well, we want to set them up for success so that they can perform well and be paid properly and have the benefits that they're due. And I said, okay, that's our goal. Can we all agree on that? And that was the first thing that I got them to agree on. And then I said, okay, we need a group that focuses on recruitment and selection, and we need a group that focuses on compensation and reclassification. They broke into their groups. They worked compatibly. Well, one principle is that we're all human beings and we have human concerns and we share them. And the more that we can listen to each other and ask questions rather than making assumptions, the easier it is to find solutions, to find collaborative moments. There is a wonderful game. It's called the Know Me game. It came out of South Africa when Nelson Mandela was out of prison, and the Black Afrikaners and the white Afrikaners were terrified because they were going to have to interact with each other on an equal basis. And what this game did was it showed that we have similar, we all have had, most of us have had parents, and we've had possibly have had siblings. We've maybe gone on a vacation. We've worked. We've had hopes and dreams, and they come out in this game. And when people are playing it, they don't want to stop because they finally realize that they have so much more in common than they thought. They see beyond race, they see beyond color, they see beyond sex.
Thank you very much, Ms. Laurel.